Before the Great War of 2077, the Vault-tec Corporation constructed a series of fallout shelters across the United States with the stated goal of preserving humanity in the event of a nuclear catastrophe. But this operation masked a dark secret, that Vault-tec also used these vaults to conduct dark social experiments on the residents without their consent. In this video, we're going to explore 6 of the most twisted and diabolical vault experiments ever conceived in the Fallout universe. So buckle up, grab some iced coffee, and let's dive into the video. Vault 11, Fallout New Vegas. The Mojave Wasteland has a variety of vaults tucked away outside the metropolis of Vegas, but one vault stands out to me because of the dark and twisted experiment hidden in its history. Upon entering Vault 11, we'll immediately notice that something went horribly wrong here. A group of 4 skeletons are found just inside the entrance, next to a few 10mm handguns and a holotape with their last words. There are no people left in this vault, and the hallways are overrun with vermin. Throughout the vault, we'll also discover campaign placards, such as "Haley is a known adulterer and communist sympathizer, elect Haley for overseer," and "Don't vote Glover, his family needs him." So it's clear that these smear campaign placards are trying to support overseer candidates by besmirching their name. I guess people really don't want this job, and for good reason, because every year the elected overseer of Vault 11 would be given over to the vault's supercomputer as a human sacrifice. The experiment in this vault required all residents to condemn one of their neighbors to death annually, or otherwise everyone in the vault would perish. Of course, the vault dwellers weren't given this information until after the doors were already sealed, with the exception of the first overseer. The residents of Vault 11 were understandably very angry when they learned about the experiment, especially given the fact that the overseer failed to mention this in advance, so the people decided to choose the overseer as the first human sacrifice. This started a tradition wherein everyone would vote for an overseer once per year, and at the conclusion of their term, the overseer would be sent into the sacrificial chamber for the sake of the rest of the vault. If only the vault dwellers hadn't bowed down to an evil supercomputer. Maybe they could have fought back sooner if they had learned to code with today's sponsor, Boot.dev. Boot.dev is the best platform for learning back-end web development. One of the biggest issues with learning any kind of programming is overcoming boredom, so Boot.dev took an approach of game design to make their development courses fun and rewarding. Boot.dev's lessons are self-paced and feel like a captivating RPG. As you complete coding assignments, you will earn XP, achievements, and complete quests on your journey to become a max-level back-end developer. And the best part is there's no fluff. You'll get hands-on practical coding experience from the get-go, because the best way to learn coding is to start writing code and shipping projects. So you'll be writing tons of code in Python and Go. While Fallout's economy is driven by caps and scraps, the economy of our world is fueled by technology, and in this environment, programmers have amazing earning potential. In fact, the median salary in the US for back-end developers last year was over $100,000. Plus, programmers often have the flexibility to work from home, just like the folks in Vault 81. So if you're looking to make a career change, or just learn a new set of skills, then now is a great time to get started with Boot.dev. It's free to create an account and demo the courses. Click the link in the description box and use my code BigDanGaming to get 25% off your first payment for Boot.dev. That's 25% off your first month or your first year, depending on the subscription you choose. Over time, different voting blocks would emerge and collude to endorse candidates for overseer, plastering the vault with slanderous campaign placards to try and get people they didn't like elected for a job that was literally a death sentence. In one instance, the so-called Justice Bloc even went so far as to coerce a woman named Kate into performing certain favors for its members on the promise that they wouldn't endorse her husband as overseer. But even after she went through with their demands, the Justice Bloc nominated her husband anyway, which prompted her to kill 4 members of the bloc. Kate's campaign for overseer was successful, and she made her first order of business to abolish the elections, opting to have the supercomputer select a resident at random each year. Fearing their loss of power, the Justice Bloc organized a violent revolt. We can find sandbag barricades and skeletons all over the vault, along with bloodstains on some of the walls. The revolt was a bloody battle, and at its conclusion there were only 5 survivors left in the entire vault. These 5 individuals decided that they would no longer obey the demands of the supercomputer hidden beneath the overseer's office. They threw themselves at the mercy of whatever the computer had in store for them. And this is where the truly sick and twisted nature of the experiment was finally laid bare. The threats of collective punishment for the entire vault were fake. Once the vault dwellers finally refused to sacrifice one of their own, the supercomputer revealed the following message.
Congratulations, citizens of Vault 11. You have made the decision not to sacrifice one of your own. You can walk with your head held high, knowing that your commitment to human life is a shining example to us all. And to make that feeling of pride even sweeter, I have some exciting news. Despite what you were led to believe, the population of Vault 11 is not going to be exterminated for its disobedience. Instead, the mechanism to open the main vault door has now been enabled, and you can come and go at your leisure.
So all those deaths were completely senseless. Racked with guilt at this revelation that they had sentenced their own neighbors to death for years, the last 5 survivors of Vault 11 decided to take their own lives, which brings us back to the holotape we found at the entrance.
Are we really gonna do this? It's open, we could just leave.
I couldn't, not after that.
We don't deserve to leave. A shining example. That's what it called us. But we did what we were supposed to. Not by a long shot. Anybody would have done what we did.
You ask me? That's exactly the problem. Now let's get on with this.
I'll go first. Wait. People should know what happened. They could learn from it. If there's anyone out there at all, I hope they never have to find out. Ready, Harry? Yeah. No, wait!
4 of the 5 survivors went through with their pack, their skeletons still resting at the entrance of the vault. But I wonder what happened to the sole survivor who refused to pull the trigger. He presumably left the vault. Could he still be out there somewhere in the Mojave? Interestingly, there is an NPC labeled Vault 11 Survivor in the game's files. He doesn't appear anywhere in the game because this content was cut from the final release, but we can spawn him in using console commands. In any case, the events of Vault 11 were entirely senseless and show the true nature of Vault-tec's sick agenda. But the experiments in this next vault were even more sinister. Vault 87, Fallout 3. The Forced Evolutionary Virus, or FEV, was an experimental virus originally developed by Vault-tec before the Great War. Its original intent was to counteract Chinese bioweapons, but later experimental projects were harnessed to try and create super soldiers by using the virus to genetically modify human test subjects. One such project was undertaken by Vault-tec at Vault 87 in the Capital Wasteland. Overseen by Dr. Wayne Merrick, the Evolutionary Experimentation Program, or EEP, was designed to test a strain of the FEV virus on the residents of Vault 87. Test subjects were confined to chambers in a lab area and exposed to an airborne strain of FEV. Within a matter of days, they would experience a complete transformation of their physiology, including a hardening of the skin, loss of hair, and an overall leveling out of gender, with male and female test subjects both looking essentially the same after FEV exposure. But there was a big problem with this experiment as well. Test subjects would continue mutating after several days, with a severe degradation of mental health and capacities, and an increase in aggression. Many test subjects would also die from these experiments. The Vault's intended purpose to create super soldiers would also be its downfall. Eventually, some of the super mutants would escape their confines, killing the research staff and overrunning the Vault. By the time we discover Vault 87 in Fallout 3, the place is entirely overrun by super mutants, who routinely prowl the wasteland to capture humans and transform them with FEV. So Vault 87 is essentially ground zero for all the super mutants we run into in Fallout 3. The area outside the entrance to Vault 87 is the most highly irradiated zone in the entire Fallout series, having been hit with a direct nuclear bombardment from the Chinese back in 2077. Here's how quickly you will die if you try to approach from the surface. If you use console commands to turn on God mode, you can explore this area without worry and discover the dead body of a female scientist clutching a few doses of Radaway. The door, however, is inaccessible. If you try to exit the vault door from inside Vault 87, you'll discover that it opens up into nothing, and you cannot actually transition back to the surface from here. We typically get captured by the Enclave while exploring here in the main quest, and the door to this area can only be opened with console commands, so it's clear Bethesda never really intended for the player to explore here. I think it's no coincidence that Vault 87 was targeted with a direct nuclear strike. China's discovery that the United States was developing FEV before the war is one of the big reasons they ended up launching the nukes. Is it possible that they knew what Merrick and his staff were cooking up in Vault 87? It seems very likely. But FEV experiments on adults are one thing, but what Vault-tec cooked up in the Commonwealth was even more diabolical, given that the subjects were children. Vault 75, Fallout 4. Constructed beneath the Malden Middle School, Vault 75 was a collaboration between Vault-tec and the town government of Malden, Massachusetts. Vault-tec provided subsidies to local families to help maximize enrollment with the stated goal of protecting children and their families from the horrors of nuclear conflict. Safeguarding the future has always been our priority, said a Vault-tec spokesperson. The opening of Vault 75 gives us all extra peace of mind, knowing that the children of Malden will be safe even if the worst comes to pass. But the horrors these people would undergo inside Vault 75 were even worse than what they could have faced on the surface. During Vault entry proceedings, children were separated from their parents. The children were all screened and admitted to the vault, while the parents were sent to meet with the head of security for an orientation. At this point, all the parents were executed by security staff while the kids began their new life in the vault. The true purpose of Vault 75 was to create super soldiers by administering a eugenics program to filter for the physically strongest among the population. The young vault dwellers were put in intensive training in all manners of physical fitness and combat, all the while being taught that it was up to them to help protect the surface one day. Once the children reached the age of 18, they would graduate from the program, complete with a ceremony full of pomp and circumstance before they would allegedly get sent to the surface on a mission. In reality, the graduates would be screened for their physical and intellectual performance, landing in one of three groups. The ones who didn't make the cut would be killed and disposed of. A second group, who scored high in intellectual capability but lacked physical performance, would be offered a spot on the Vault 75 research team. The Overseer liked to select candidates who were emotionally suggestible too, which made it easier for him to run the program without complaints. The final group, those who scored high in physical capabilities, would be filtered for genome harvesting. And while it's not explicitly stated, terminal entries suggest that these graduates were also killed, considering there is a terminal entry talking about organ harvesting and storage protocols. By the time the sole survivor stumbles upon the vault in 2287, all the residents are long gone. The vault has become overrun with gunners, who were fighting against a gang of Brotherhood of Steel members in my playthrough. A terminal entry in the Overseer's office shows that 100% of residents and research subjects have left the premises. So what happened? Terminal entries suggest that several students planned to revolt against the Overseer and security staff, using their physical advantages to overpower the Vault-tec employees and escape the vault. Presumably this plan succeeded. Though there are a few signs of a violent struggle within the vault, we can find a few skeletons in Vault-tec uniforms. There is also a skeleton in a military uniform handcuffed to a railing in the kitchen area, next to a plate of dog food and a bottle of dirty water. There are a lot of messed up vault experiments in Fallout, but creating child super soldiers definitely ranks high on the list. Vault 112, Fallout 3. We first encounter this vault during the main quest, while searching for our father all over the Capital Wasteland. Vault 112 was constructed with the stated purpose of creating a simulated utopia called Tranquility Lane, where residents could essentially plug into the Matrix and live their best lives. There was just one problem though. Once they entered the simulation, the residents had no means of leaving on their own, and they were at the complete mercy of the Vault's Overseer, who used the simulation to torture the residents and live out his sick, twisted fantasies. Unlike many of the vaults on this list, which only leave behind remnants of past atrocities, we can actually witness the experiment firsthand when we arrive at Vault 112 during the main quest. And since our father was a dipshit who got himself trapped in the simulation, we have no choice but to enter it ourselves and try and save him. Inside the simulation, Overseer Stanislaus Braun has disguised himself as a young girl named Betty. He will ask us to perform a series of tasks, all related to torturing the residents of Tranquility Lane. Things like making a young boy cry, breaking up a marriage that's on the rocks, or straight up killing people inside the simulation. We can either go along with his demands, at which point he will allow us to leave with our father, or we can shut down the whole simulation by finding the failsafe computer in one of the abandoned houses. This will trigger a Chinese attack on the population inside the simulation, effectively trapping Braun in here forever. One of the things that's always bothered me about this quest is that once we get back into the real world, we cannot do anything about Braun or the other residents trapped in the simulation lounger chairs. We can interact with a variety of terminals throughout the building, but that's about it. We can't save the people, and we can't kill Braun, so I guess we're just supposed to leave and forget all about Vault 112. Fuck 'em, am I right? To be fair, most of the residents would likely die if removed from the lounger chairs, since the life support pods on the chairs are pretty much the only thing keeping them alive at this point, since these are actually the original residents of Vault 112 who've been trapped here for over 200 years. But I don't know, this quest just kind of feels unfinished as it is. And speaking of quests, our next vault is involved in a very personal request for one of our companions. Vault 95, Fallout 4. Located near the edge of the glowing sea, we visit Vault 95 as part of Kate's personal quest in Fallout 4. This vault was designed to treat people suffering from drug addiction and monitor what happens when addicts are put into an environment where they can no longer abuse substances. And according to Vault-tec, the recovery program was a resounding success. The Vault-tec rehabilitation program seems to have helped every subject in this vault deal with the symptoms of withdrawal and cope with a new life in the vault environment. That is not to say that withdrawal was not a challenging process for some subjects. Our hypothesis was correct. When there is simply no other alternative, an individual can recover. Sounds great, right? What could possibly go wrong? Well, given that this experiment was run by Vault-tec, of course there was a sinister twist for the project. You see, Vault-tec embedded an agent of their own into the population of Vault 95. This agent was instructed to monitor the residents, and then, after 5 years, he would reveal a massive stash of chems just to see what would happen. Given the opportunity to use drugs again, would these addicts break their sobriety? And what happens when a vault full of junkies has to compete over a stash of drugs? The results are not particularly surprising. We find evidence of violent struggles all throughout the vault, and terminal entries from the residents also paint a picture of the results of this twisted experiment. They knew what they were doing. They weren't trying to help us. I never thought I would see chems again. Why would I? But now here we are, with a whole lifetime's worth of stuff laid out in front of us like a freaking department store window display. And it was here the whole time. Some cracked right away, grabbed what they could and ran off to get high. There was fighting. I hid. Nothing I could have done to help anyone. I am still hearing gunshots. By the time we discover Vault 95 in Fallout 4, all the residents are long gone, and the shelter has been taken over by the gunners. But the one silver lining for our cause is that the addiction treatment technology developed by Vault-tec actually helps Kate get sober in our timeline. But of course, this is no consolation to the junkies of Vault 95, who were given false hope by Vault-tec, only to have it all ripped away for the sake of a sick experiment. Vault 108, Fallout 3. The last vault we're going to take a look at is the famous Gary Vault from Fallout 3. But unlike the other vaults on this list, the downfall of Vault 108 wasn't brought about by its main experiment, but a side project instead. The main goal of Vault 108 was a social experiment to study the effects of leadership conflicts and transitions. The primary admin postings for the vault were intentionally left unfilled or assigned to residents with terminal illnesses. On top of this, the primary power source of the vault was also set to intentionally fail roughly 20 years into the experiment, just to see how the dwellers would deal with the crisis. When we discover Vault 108 in Fallout 3, the vault is entirely overrun with rats and clones of an individual named Gary who attack us on sight.
Gary!
The Garys of Vault 108 are remnants from a failed cloning project conducted by some of the scientists in the vault. We can learn more details about the project from a holotape in one of the labs. Over 50 clones of Gary were created by the scientists. Each one was hostile to everyone who wasn't a Gary clone. And the results of this experiment speak for themselves. The Garys eventually killed all the other residents and overran the vault. One of the mysterious things about this vault is it's the only one in the game that doesn't have a functioning terminal, likely due to the complete loss of power. But there are some salvaged Vault-tec terminal entries in the Citadel that give us some overview of the management project we already discussed. So there you have it, the 6 most twisted and diabolical experiments in Fallout lore. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to Big Dan Gaming for more Fallout and RPG videos. Big shout out to all the channel members for supporting my content. Until next time, this has been Big Dan. I should go.